All right, let's get started with example 4. So what we have is we have this little picture right here, and it's kind of like a little function machine. And if you see the function right here, the function is f of x equals 5x. And what happens is there's values that go into this little machine, which are the x values, which are the input, and then you do the function, and then there's something that comes out, which is the output, or the y's, right? So you put that x in, and goes in with the input, and what happens is you get out the output, which is the y, or sometimes when we're talking about functions, especially, it's called f of x. Okay, so what this says on the left is you can think of a function as an input-output machine. For example, Tasha's earnings, f of x equals 5x. If you put in a value of 5, if you input a value x, the output is f of x. So if you put x in there, you get out f of x, right? So let's see what happens if you put in the value of 2. When you put 2 in, 2 goes in for x. So what happens is it becomes f of 2, right? 2 goes into the x, and you end up with 5 times 2, which ends up being what comes out? 10. And there's 10 right there. And 10 represents what our f of x value is, or what f of 2 is. F of 2 equals 10. Let's look at a different one. Let's say you put 6 in. Okay, so if you put 6 in as our input value into our input-output machine, what we're doing is we're putting in f of 6. And so we're going 5 times 6 because we're putting 6 in for the x, right? So we have 5 times 6, and 5 times 6 ends up being 30. And so what we do is we get out 30 out of our machine, which is the value right here. Okay? So let's go ahead and look at a couple different examples. So for 4a, what we're going to do is evaluate the function for the given input values, right? So we're going to put values in to this function. So the first, f of x equals 3x plus 2. Find f of x when x equals 7 and when x equals negative 4. So basically, when it says find f of x, it's telling us to find y. So if it was an equation, right, we would go y equals 3x plus 2, figure out what y is. Well, what would we do? When x is equal to 7, you substitute 7 in, right? And then you end up with 21 plus 2, which means y equals 23. We do the same process here when we're dealing with functions. We have our function notation here. F of x equals 3x plus 2, except we're going to figure out what f of x when x equals 7. So we substitute 7 in here for x. So we're trying to find out what f of 7 is. We substitute 7 in for x there. Then we just have to do order of operations. 3 times 7 is 21 plus 2, which means f of 7 is 23. That is our answer. That's what f of x equals. It equals 23 when x equals 7. So we can say f of x equals 23 when x equals 7. Okay? But they also want to know what is f of x when x equals negative 4. So let's go ahead and figure that out. So we're going to start here with f of x, our original function, 3x plus 2, but now we're going to figure out what f of x is when x is equal to negative 4. So I'm going to substitute negative 4 in here for x, so now I'm finding f of negative 4, and I substituted in here for x, And then just do the order of operations. I rewrite this f of negative 4. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12 plus 2. That means f of negative 4, it leaves me with negative 10. Or we can say f of x is equal to negative 10 when x is equal to negative 4. So really this statement means the same thing as this. Okay, I just like writing this because it's a lot shorter and more efficient than writing all of this, because you can see f of x, right? X is equal to 4 because there's a negative 4 in where the x is supposed to be. So when x is equal to negative 4, f of x is equal to negative 10. So there you go. That's example 4A. So we're just really going to practice this in a couple different examples. So let's go ahead and try the next one. It says evaluate the function with the given input values. For g of t, which is the same thing as f of x, right, equals 1.5t minus 5. Find g of t, which is the same thing as f of x, which is the same thing as y, when t is equal to 6 and when t is equal to negative 2. Perfect. So I'm going to write down this function here, g of t 1.5t minus 5, and we're going to figure it out when t is equal to 6. So I'm just going to substitute 6 in wherever there's a t, and then just do the order of operations here. So g of 6 is equal to 1.5 times 6. I'm not exactly sure what that is, so I'm going to do that multiplication off to the side. 6 times 5 is 30, write the 0, carry the 3. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 3 is 9, and there's one decimal, so there's one decimal here. So it's 9.0, which is the same thing as 9, and then minus 5. So that means g of 6 equals 4. That is our answer. Perfect. But we also had to figure out what it is when t is equal to negative 2. So I'm going to rewrite that function. G of t is equal to 1.5t minus 5, except now we're going to figure it out when t is equal to negative 2. So I'm going to substitute negative 2 in everywhere I see a t. So g of negative 2 is equal to 1.5 times negative 2 minus 3. Okay, order of operations here states I have to do the multiplication before I do the subtraction. So 1.5 times a negative 2, a positive times a negative is a negative. 1.5 times 2 would just be 3, minus 5, and then I do the subtraction, and I end up with negative 8. And there is my answer. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and practice this together one more time. So on this example, for C, we're going to evaluate the function h of r, which is the same thing as f of x, which is the same thing as y, equals 1/3 multiplied by r plus 2. So we're going to find h of r when r equals 600 and when r equals negative, this is a negative 12. It's kind of, okay. So first I'm going to write that function. H of r is equal to 1/3 r plus 2, and we're going to figure out what it is when r equals 600. So I just substitute that 600 in. Okay, and then we just do order of operations. With the order of operations, we do multiplication before we do addition. 1/3 of 600, or 600 divided by 3, would be 200 plus 2, which means our answer is 202. Perfect. Okay, so that's the first part. Now we need to do the second part, which is figuring out what h of r equals. When r is equal to negative